Let's get on to the zodiac. We'll start today with Pisces. So this will be particularly of interest to you if you have Sun, especially rising, and or Moon in Pisces, but can also be considered wherever Pisces is placed in the chart. So, Pisces, orthodox traditional ruler Jupiter, and sometimes considered Neptune. Esoteric ruler Pluto. So the two fish are bound together. And this is why Pisces, upon the mutable cross in its undeveloped state, is a sign of slavery, bondage, captivity, its association with addictions, particularly those Neptunian qualities, which aren't really true of Neptune, but are in the way they get covered over or hidden by the lunar energies, as that otherwise devotional force gets blinded by the oceans of matter. So when the soul first comes into incarnation, as we discussed in the Three Crosses clip, there is a perceived loss of the spirit principle and the soul even. There is a binding to life, an enslavement to the oceans of matter. And so Pisces upon the mutable cross is sensitive, very reactive, sensitive to the environment, to people, to feelings. There is this great empathic capacity, but that's not really the same as true and genuine compassion, or that instinctual reactivity, the instinctual sensitivity to its environment is not the same as genuine spiritual intuition. So it's a real sneaky thing that can happen with the Piscean person, where there can be a delusion as to one's spiritual nature and capacity, because as this mutable water sign, it is so incredibly magnetic. Its rays, by the way, are 2 and 6. So they're the feeling and fusing ray forces, and the fusing of the second ray and the devotional aspect, the attachment aspect that can happen with the 6th ray. That sensitivity can be misinterpreted as evolved consciousness, but it's not actually. That sensitivity is only to that of the astral forces it's surrounded by and in. The medium is often found with Pisces prominent somewhere in the chart. DK actually tells us that trance mediums, those people are channeling certain energy forces and beings, so-called, tend to have strong Pisces and Cancer in the chart, which is interesting because I definitely confirmed that. I was looking up, whose chart was it? One of those popular ones. Bashar, right? Daryl Anker. And he had Pisces, Moon and Cancer rising. But he also had a few placements in Virgo, if I am recalling correctly. And DK says in Esoteric Astrology as well that if we see the trance medium with those placements, but with the influence of Virgo coming through, then there is an opportunity there for the development of the personality to cultivate in the opposite sign, the polar opposite sign of Pisces, that of the mercurial quality, orthodox ruler of Virgo, of mental discrimination and discernment. So the problem of Pisces with this lower psychic sensitivity, that sensitivity to the astral plane, the bondage and attachment, the need to merge but unconsciously and instinctually merge with everyone and everything around it, this gets tempered and somewhat balanced or solved through those qualities of Virgo, through Mercury, which is, Virgo is a mutable earth sign, so it's in that aspect of substance. So actually starting to go, what is this, that, and the other thing? And why am I actually being pulled towards this particular person's circumstance? Maybe I need to separate out Mercury, discrimination and the mental aspect, and really figure out what is this from that. This is always my qualm with the psychic mediums, because they go, oh, I'm channeling this being and they say this, that and the other thing. And I go, well, why would you just believe what a so-called entity says? You wouldn't say to a child, yes, if anyone comes up to you in the street, dear son, daughter, and they offer you candy and then a ride in their car, go along with it. And yet a lot of these low-grade, lower psychic mediums tend to fall into that trap. So we see a bit of that with what we now call the New Age movement, which is really a reference to a lot of these old Piscean, regressive Piscean tendencies, where you've got the trance mediums, or you've got these undifferentiated, in many ways, that lower expression of Jupiter as the orthodox ruler in Pisces, in terms of all these different wisdom traditions, but no real actual understanding or differentiation about what one is preaching. So we have a lot of these New Age gurus where there isn't necessarily much consciousness or awareness of what they're really talking about, and all kinds of contradictions and lack of embodiment, a lack of discrimination, once again, are found here. And so there is a certain degree of immaturity and hollowness in the individual, because there is such a deep blindness to what it is they're engaging with. So again, this is still Pisces on the mutable cross, okay? So we're talking about the shadow aspects. We're talking about the immature and undeveloped qualities of Pisces. So a lot of those can be aided or developed through Virgo. And that's particularly worth thinking about when you have, for instance, the sun and the moon in Pisces, particularly the moon, where there's the trapping, that bondage aspect present or implied through a lunar placement in Pisces, to balance that out with the qualities of Virgo and mental discrimination and cultivating the mind in that regard. So Jupiter, blind enmeshment, the shadow of the second ray. There can be a loving, sensitive quality, but once again, not necessarily any true capacity for a deeper love. And why is that? Because true love requires sacrifice. And sacrifice requires detachment and renouncing those addictions, those blind enmeshments that happen with the Piscean upon the mutable cross. So when we're talking about the Piscean individual evolving towards the fixed cross, dealing with their mutable problem and integrating their personality, we are looking at the truly mentally discriminative Piscean, which is able to mediate between the soul and the personality. And here we have the more mystical qualities of the true Piscean begin to emerge. From medium to mediator. The two fish are bound together with the line there, and that line is indicative of one of two things: either the enmeshment, the blindness, the bondage of the Christ principle of the soul and the spirit aspect hidden in matter, hidden in the instinctual consciousness, or the sutratma, which brings the two, the personality, the matter aspect, and the soul self, the spirit aspect, together in proper harmonious relationship. It's for this reason that Venus, esoterically considered, is exalted in Pisces. Venus is a fifth ray planet, and she is one of our chemical fusing, and she's sometimes considered to have a second ray personality, echoing the Jupiterian function. So esoterically considered, Venus unites the two. So whereas we had the bondage, we now have the fusing together of soul and matter. And for that very reason also, Mercury is in detriment in Pisces. And that is because of we already discussed the loss of the discriminative mental function at the level of the personality, yes. But the hidden esoteric reason is that when the true fusion happens, there is no longer the need for a mediator, because Mercury serves that function of mediating between the higher self and the lower self, which is why the Mercury becomes very important when we're mounting the fixed cross, when we look at the transits, a few other bits and pieces, because it's showing us where there is that recognition of duality happening, and therefore the learning of lessons through harmony through conflict, which is a fourth ray quality, and Mercury is a fourth ray planet. So Mercury has that mediating function, but as Pisces goes through its evolution, it goes through the renouncing of attachment to matter, the giving up of those enmeshed, lower psychic, lower impressionability, that simply flowing into from one stream to another. It gives up that magnetic need to fuse with everything and everyone. Renounce, detach, foster connection with the indwelling Christ principle, activating the Sutratma, which is again the line, activating the Sutratma, and then there's the mediating between soul and personality and the mystical qualities that are associated with Pisces, yes. And eventually at a certain point where we have the death aspect that occurs in Pisces, then we have the death of the lower self and the shining forth of the soul coming forward. The keynote for Pisces upon the mutable cross: go forth into matter, blindly, enmeshed, undifferentiated. Upon the fixed cross, or the evolving individual: I leave the Father's house, and turning back, I save. I save. And who is the great emblem of the Piscean problem and solution? Jesus Christ. Pluto is the esoteric ruler. The first ray force cuts the thread that binds the two fish together, destroying, in this case, the matter aspect, or the illusory self that comes from identification with the matter aspect. And what is left in wake is the saviour. So the evolution of the Piscean individual is one of elevating out of instinctual, enmeshed, impressionable psychic consciousness, astral consciousness, moving into detachment, developing discernment and mental discrimination found in polar opposite sign Virgo, and to begin to merge the two aspects together, the soul through the Sutratma, through the devotional aspect, becoming from slave to servant, and through the hidden exalted power of Venus, bringing the two back together. And of course that's Jupiter as well. It's that higher expression of Jupiter as a second ray planet, bringing the two together, fusing, having that mystical way, and moving towards that of the great sacrifice, the crucifixion, the Plutonic aspect, the giving up of that which is identified with the lower realm, the lower three worlds, and a full embrace of spirit, merging back with the Father as the spirit aspect. It's interesting to consider Pisces as the great sign of spirit in that way. Truthfully, it is Aries as that place where the sun is exalted, where every initiating impulse comes from the will of God, the mind of God. But that ultimate embrace again into the Father aspect, the actualization of that as it comes down, descends into matter. Jesus Christ was the Son of God, after all. And in polar opposite sign Virgo, the matter aspect. Virgo is said to be actually the oldest sign. There's a secret mystery there for another day. But the spirit aspect and the matter aspect, of course. Mary, Mother Mary, who was the one who gestated the Christ, was the Virgin Mary, Virgo. So, medium, mediator to saviour. Evolved Piscean individuals are deeply compassionate, empathetic in the higher sense, that real ability to understand, not blind enmeshment, true understanding which comes from right awareness and a true dying into that place which is actually unified with all. Not the lower unification of the instinctual mass consciousness, but the unification with the spirit aspect, which is at the heart of every human being. The evolved Piscean is deeply loving, sacrificially devoted, and in service to humanity. They are constant reminders of what love is possible. They are truly wonderful helpers and servants of the race. The world saviors are always found somewhere in Pisces. We are exiting out of the Piscean era as well. And while the Aquarian motifs are going to be of utmost importance to us moving forward, we still need to come to grips with the Piscean problem and the Piscean opportunity, because we need to be taking the Piscean intelligence, the Piscean wisdom, the Piscean love, compassion, the capacity for renunciation and detachment, and ultimately sacrifice, the death of the personality, all of those mysteries, the mystical mysteries, the Plutonic way of death and sacrifice. We need to be carrying those principles, that wisdom, into the Aquarian age, because the Aquarian age will have a lot to do with the liberation of the matter aspect, but we still cannot do that until there has been a proper relationship with the matter aspect established, and that cannot first happen without detachment, renunciation, sacrifice with our identification with that which isn't true, with the matter aspect. So it is very, very important for us to come to grips with the Piscean problem, and to always come back to and having a root in the heart aspect, the love aspect. When Pisces lets go of her undifferentiated, blind enmeshment with everyone and everything, and develops discrimination, develops the capacity to know this thing from that thing, and is willing to give up her personally identified and fundamentally selfish attachments to the matter aspect, she becomes the all-inclusive world saviour, that who loves all, that which is the unobstructed love principle. Pluto, killing off all of that which is an obstruction to the life aspect. Pisces is, after all, a second and sixth ray sign. So, the Piscean individual, a greatly loving, compassionate, devoted individual, once they can let go of their attachments, move out of slavery into service and sacrifice, and also a capacity to synthesize between many different religious and mystical traditions. It is, of course, ruled in part by Jupiter, which is a second ray planet and a wisdom planet, the planet of the guru. And once it develops that mental discrimination and moves out of mediumship into mediatorship, the capacity to bring all of these the true core of all of these myths and legends and religions, all of those traditions together. We have the true teacher, although Gemini is more of the pure teacher as the wisdom aspect, but certainly the transmitter of wisdom, the mystic or the minister, and that is the inclusive aspect of Pisces, the unobstructed universal love aspect.